Marco is going to speak to us apparently about robot jazz. I think that's what all that means. Thank you, Marco.
Yeah, thank you, Roland. All right. So the story that I'm telling you guys today is about the robotics operating system. Who here knows about the robotics operating system? Can I get hands? Okay. Some people don't. Okay, so basically, the robotic operating system is not an operating system. But when it happened, they gave it that name because they were like, oh, we have this robot here, we need something to run it, right? So we have to come up with an operating system. But in the end, this is not what happened because they didn't want to reinvent the wheels. There's operating systems, so you run some Linux machine, or nowadays you can run it in other stuff, but mostly works on Linux, and then you just run this ROS on top, which is something that allows you to create your robot software on top of it, right? Just to put everyone on the same picture, in the robotics world, there's this programming pattern that is called component-oriented programming. It's very widespread, and pretty much everyone uses this. And you can think about it like microservices, and it's basically you just create these small binaries that talk to each other, right? So you can think of like, I have a camera, I put a binary that takes the images, then I have another binary that takes the images from that binary, calls through the network, and do some processing over the images. That's a small example. So the story of today is about this ROS operating system. Robotics operating system has a wide range of packages, and there's something that we call the ROS boss, which is basically the guy who is in charge of a certain release, right? So I'm going to talk about it because I was the ROS boss for our latest release, which is Jazzy Jalisco, and that's the name we gave it. And it's quite a complicated process, and I guess it's interesting for not only the robotics people, but anyone that wants to put some software out there that has a lot of clients. So yeah, some justifying a bit why this is important and why it's worth talking about it. We're going to give out some numbers to see that it's not as easy as some other software, right? So as I said, the robotics operating system is a highly distributed software, and because of these binaries and because of the nature of it, everyone in the world can create their own repo, can create their own package, and can put it out there, right? And we will take care of the release of this package, and we put it in the build farm, we put it in the repository, right? So to give you a small idea, I took these pictures from, this is our repos, and I think you can see that there's like almost 2,000 packages for Humble, which is the previous release, Jazzy. We got 1,500 now, and our rolling release has 4,600, almost 7. Yeah. So that's a lot of packages. There's also a lot of people using it, a lot of downloads. I'm not going to go through the numbers. This is also on the Discourse if you guys want to have a look, and also a lot of companies using it, right? So you got to be careful on what you do, or what you put out there, and you want to do it timely. You want to do it properly, right? And then again, I did an overview of what is ROS, but I want to go a bit more into detail of what is really ROS, because this is what we are trying to distribute, right? So we usually refer to ROS as this plumbing, which is the networking that I just talked about to connect these nodes that they talk to each other. There's also a bunch of tools that we put out there with this plumbing system, but they also a lot of them come from the community. And then you got these capabilities and ecosystem that are actually mainly provided by the community. So the entire community do their own thing. So there's people focus on navigation, there's people focus on perception, there's people focus on control, there's many other parts of the system. So when we talk about a release, how much of that is our work, how much is not, right? So if you look at the SKCD example, in the ROS, adapted for the ROS ecosystem, we have this thing that we call the core ROS packages. And those are the small subset of packages of the ecosystem that we actually actively develop, actively support, and that we actually care to put out there with a release. The rest of the entire thing we sometimes refer to it to user packages because they are developed by users of this core of this core set of packages. But we also help these people build the packages. There's tooling for them to release and put it out, and we also help them put it out there into the repo. A bit on the releases. So basically, there's this thing called RAP 2000, which is just a write-up that we do in the write-ups that we do in the ROS ecosystem, and it basically defines how our releases system work. So we basically put a release yearly, and we alternate between LTS and non-LTS. LTS, they get like 5-year supports, non-LTS get 1.5 years. And then we have different support levels. So different support levels means, like, for example, Ubuntu is tier 1. It gets more testing. It gets the bug fixing is prioritized. But then if you go down into macOS, this might not be the case, right? And then we have different target platforms also for the different releases. And then we have the Rep 2001, which basically defines the variants of the packages. So we have this variant that I'm not going to go through, but the most important one is the desktop variant, and that one includes all these core packages that we've been talking about, right? So as a ROS boss is one of the key parts of the release process. And then thanks to the very nice process that has been put out for many years, we are able to put the entire desktop variant out there on the day of the release, which actually was not the case before. So if we look at the entire spectrum of releases that have been happening, you can see that lately, at the beginning we were doing a bit more frequent releases and a bit more here and there, but lately they are coming out on May every year. And we have this release called the rolling release. So basically everything that is lately developed and is new goes into the rolling release, and then it can be backported, and then at some point we just branch out of the rolling release and we create one of our more stable releases, right? And we'll see a bit more about that. And more on the ROS boss side, what are the responsibilities of the ROS boss? So you can see one of them is choosing the name, probably one of the most important ones. Then you port to a new Ubuntu if this is needed. So Ubuntu is the primary platform that is supported by ROS. So that's the main target initially, and then we take care of the rest. Then we do an initial branching of rolling, and then creating and coordinating testing of this branch now, and then making the actual release, and then some after release work, right? So afterwards, you, as a ROS boss, you compromise yourself for the life of that release to make sure that it is alive and the new updates keep coming, right? So for example, for Jazzy, it's an LTS release, so I will be working on it for the next 5 years. Infrastructure. So this is made possible 100% by the infrastructures that we have. It's an amazing work by our infrastructure team, and I'm going to do a bit of talking about it so you can get an idea of how it works. So we have something called the ROS distro. It's a repo on GitHub, and it basically contains a YAML file. So in this YAML file, this YAML file is basically the source of truth. You can think about it as a database for all the packages of a certain distro. So each distro in this repo will have a YAML file. So I think the picture is Iron, which is the release right before Jazzy. So you can see that the packages will be listed there, and you have information about the package, like the source branch, documentation, repo, the URL of the different repos, and all that. This gets automatically updated by a tool called Bloom, and we'll talk about it a bit more later. And the build farm actively pulls these files and then uses this information to basically build the packages automatically. And now we talk about Bloom. So this is one from the user perspective of ROS, and someone that wants to release a package that has done certain work on robotics, and they say, oh, this is useful for the community, I'm going to put a package out there. So basically, this is a command line tool that you can, you have a repo, like in this case, we have RCLCPP, is the example. And you say, I want to release this package. So you basically create your package infrastructure, which is basically an XML in your repo. You put some information there. You put the version, you put your changelog, and then you run this Bloom command line. And what it does is create this GBP branches. So you have a release repo, and then in this release repo, it uses this format where release branching and platform-specific sources get pushed, and then it actually creates the pull request to the previous file that we saw, the ROS distro file, and then this pull request is the one that will integrate the information about your package into the distro file, and then the build farm will continuously read this distro file and build your package, and it will appear in the repo by some infrastructure magic. And then the ROS2 repos file, it's basically a subset with some information about the actual packages that a ROS boss should care more about, and the ROS core team also cares about, which is basically the desktop variant that I was talking about. So it basically contains right now about 106 repos and 358 packages. So these are the ones that the core team of ROS will be actually actively developing, right? It contains latest version of each repo for a certain distro, and it also contains every single sync. So periodically, packages that get updated and get added into a certain distro, they get synced, and then this is reflected into this repo through GitHub tags. So this is the picture of the build farm. It's you guys can access it in build.ros2.org, and it runs all the jobs for all the ROS releases, for all the architectures, for all the supported platforms. Basically, as I said, it goes, reads the ROS distro file, pulls out the information, builds the source packages, and then builds the binaries, and initially it sets them into a test repo, and then this test repo is responsibility of the ROS boss to go check this test repo and sync it to the actual, what would be the production repo, right? And put it out there. There's another instance of Jenkins. This is the CI. So the ci.ros2.org is what we use, and we use it to run tests, all the tests for these ROS core packages. So this ROS core, every time there's a change on these ROS core packages, we will run and make sure that it's not breaking any tests, right? So we will run tests for regressions, put it in the PR itself, and then if it doesn't pass the test, then we don't merge it. We figure out what's happening and try to fix it. One interesting thing Steven likes to say, which is the guy in charge of the infra, that up to his belief, this is not this one, but the build farm is the biggest public build farm that he has ever found out in terms of packages and all that. All right, so let's talk a bit more about the process itself. Once you become a ROS boss, what happens? So there's a process board that is a bit more for the ROS boss to follow, and it has all the steps in GitHub issues that we actually go closing as you do them. And there's more, both are public, but this one is more like to the public, this one is more for the ROS boss itself to follow. So these ones are the rough schedule of what is happening and when it's happening, so people can read what to expect. And these are the steps that we usually follow. As I said, one of the most important one is naming the release. So this one happens quite early. Usually the name of a release is announced on the same day that the previous release happens. These releases are named in alphabetic order, and they use an adjective and a turtle species name as a general rule. So what we do is we put out a post for the community to suggest adjectives and suggest turtle species with a letter that corresponds to that release. And the thread goes on. We put a lot of, the ROS boss has to write them down, put them together, and then there's a discussion on the ROS projects committee, and then a name gets selected. Then there's a logo commission that usually is done related to whatever name the release had happened. And then at some point, there's a date where we freeze the rolling release. And then these rolling packages might need certain updates or fixes. So that's the time when we do it. So one of the biggest examples is when we need to port the entire release to a new Ubuntu. So if there's a major Ubuntu coming, then that is a work that we might have to do. There's the branching of this release. So when it's rolling is stable enough, then we just branch it into a new release. We give it a name, then we run some tests on it, we do a release. And then the post-release work that I was talking about is just basically taking care of the release for the life of it. This is a bit more of a visual thing. You can see there's the rolling release that we have going there. And then we port it into a new Ubuntu if needed. So in the case of Jazzy, it was needed. It must also like there's also other portings involved. Like so I know like we had a lot of work with linters that year. We had a lot of work. Also Python was changing version. So these things might also have to be updated in the rolling release. And once you have that for that freeze period of time, then you just create the branch. Okay, then after that, what we do is we have something that we call the tutorial party. This is something that we've been doing lately that is actually quite cool. What we did is we got all the tutorials that we had, in the documentation. We created a script, and then we created one issue for each tutorial, for each supported platform, and for each architecture. And then we did the permutation of those. We put all these issues. I think it's about like 600 something issues. And then we put it out there. And then we told the community, hey, we have this new release coming. Please go test it out and tell us what is happening, what you get there, right? So that's pretty cool. The response on the community was great. A lot of people engaged, like running this on different platforms, Mac OS, Windows, Linux, Red Hat, whatever. And we really fixed a lot of bugs, and we actually improved the quality of the release on day one. Because one of the main things that happens in the when releasing ROS distros is that everyone is very skeptical of using it the first day, right? Like everyone's like, whoa, I'm not gonna run this on my production robot, right? I don't want it to kill someone. Let me wait a few years until this is getting into a stable thing, right? Like, until people have been playing around with it for a while. So this was a big effort on trying to improve that situation. Because then the other problem is that by the time people start using it, then it's almost the end of the life of the release. And then the end of the life of the release happens, and then people are like, oh, you know what, I'm not going to change again to another release because I just started using this one. And then they end up using a release that is not supported anymore, right? So yeah, there was a really good response on this. One thing that we do is to the top contributors of this test, we give them swag. So with every release, we put out a bunch of swag with the logo. It usually, it only stays on the store for the life of that release. So once that release is gone, the swag is gone. And it's on spring.ros.org, and they sell it, and the profits go to the foundation. And yeah, for the tutorial party, I think this year was like the top 10 contributors, they got some t-shirt out of it. Yeah, and then it comes to release day. Release day, you have to mark the distribution active in a few places, ROS distro, index ROS, You run this sync job that moves all the build packages from the test repo into the production one, and it's available to everyone. You do some tagging in some of the repos to mark that those releases in the ROS distro files and these ROS2 repos and all that. And then you make an announcement post on Discord, and everyone can start using the release. So for Jazzy, we released on May 23, which is Turtle Day, 2024. It's an LTS. I'm bounded to keep working on it until 2029. We released 1,732 packages on day one, thanks to this entire amazing infrastructure. It supports 3 architectures, 6 different operating systems. It has 211 contributors, and we got like 29 tutorial testers. And as I said, we have to keep maintaining the release. So what we don't do is we don't break API for the core packages. So we just, all feature development will go into rolling, and any improvements that are breaking API, they will just stay there and go into the next release. But if it's a bug fix and it can be backported, then it will get backported, and these things will update packages into the release. The supported platforms, Ubuntu, Windows are tier 1, tier 2, Red Hat, and tier 3, macOS and Debian. Yeah, and then we did the release. We put the post in Discord, which is our main means of communication, and that's it. I want to just remind everyone that we have our ROS conference coming not so far from here in Singapore. So if you're interested in more ROS and more robotics, this is a really, really interesting conference to attend. There's a lot of people, a lot of folks, and a lot of things going on in the field. Yeah, thank you very much. Here's a bit of links and information where you can find the ROS project, Gazebo, OpenRMF, which is the things that we spend our time on. And yeah, I think I have a few minutes for questions.
Very cool. Thank you, Marco. They have a round of applause. Rich, please set up. While Rich is setting up, we've got room for about one question, if anyone has one, before I start making cracks about jazz. No questions on the task of building an operating system? Excellent. So, Marco, if I understand you correctly, I have 5 years now to make jokes about jazz. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think you have about 5 years because it's already been like almost 1. So we almost get into the freeze time for the next release, Kilted Keiju, the K1.
Right, it's already in, yeah, I understand. So in that case, I have while this is not happening, one more question. The turtle, is that like the logo, because of the logo turtle?
Yes, so one of the things that we have in one of the initial, the tutorials that we have for ROS is based on logo. So it's basically a little turtle that you can move around, and the way you do it is you do it using ROS nodes and sending messages and all that. So it's an introductory tool for people to learn how to use ROS. Is this little turtle, and is based on logo.
Wow. The logo turtle was from the 70s, I think.